African feminism, like any other feminism, start from the point of view of social justice, fairness, equity, and equality between women and men. The difference, however, is that a lot of the other feminisms, like African feminism, you come across terms like womanism, Asian feminism, women from Latin America, are of the view that Western feminists, which are mostly Europe and America, have dominated the discourse of feminism and many times do not contextualize and appreciate the different experiences of women across the globe. An example is a woman from an Islamic faith, for instance. They go into a marriage knowing that the religion allows the man to marry 4 women. So the concept of monogamy being unacceptable doesn't really apply. They find it alien. The concepts of women veiling up doesn't even apply. And yet Western women will look at it as oppression. Things about dowry, whether it's acceptable, whether it is not. So you find sometimes there's confusion about appreciating things like that. For instance, world over, we know that it's mostly men who have to pay a dowry, a bride price. And yet in India, it is women who pay bride price. So do then men say they are being oppressed because women are paying for them bride price? Or do the women now claim they are being oppressed because they have to pay the bride price? How about a place like Uganda, where the whole Uganda, it is women whose parents receive bride price. All men are expected to pay a bride price for the woman they are going to marry. And growing up, there was this story of someone in the family whose husband was not well to do, but for her, she had some resources. So because of the ridicule, she literally mobilized the number of cows the father wanted, passed it on to the man and said, you come and present them. But people found out it was her resources. And to date, it is a point of joke, of ridicule that, that one paid for herself. Like, how desperate can you be? So you see, even if I have better resources than my man, I'm not expected to support him. Then is considered weak. So there are concepts like that. Another thing of difference is our view of same-sex relationships or marriage. A lot of Western feminism promote or find it not problematic for same-sex relationships. Like, you know, there are those campaigns, ban bras, you can do away without men. So basically, women can have same-sex relationships. A lot of African view are governed by their culture, which are similar to Christianity in terms of their view to marriage, their view to the reason women and men even engage. So it should eventually, it doesn't always, but it should culminate, a relationship should, or courtship should culminate into a marriage and eventually children. And when you don't have children in a marriage, it's problematic. When a man is with a woman and she's not married, you know, some men, first of all, they will test if a woman can get pregnant. If she produces a child, then they will make a decision to marry her. So some men will not even marry a woman. They can waste a lot of your years and they will never marry you because you can't have a child. And it's always assumed that it is the woman who is infertile. Sometimes it's even the man. And if he goes around telling other parties that, you know what, my wife can't have a child, many men end up with children that are not theirs because men never think they have the problem. So the other woman knows you have a child, she'll get the child from elsewhere and present you a child, and you go around thinking that what? It is the other woman who can't give birth. And when you find this woman relocates to another man, immediately she's pregnant. So who is the infertile one? So concepts like that. So Western feminists will encourage lesbianism, while African women will frown upon that. Of course, there are African women who have gone into lesbianism and things like that. But basically, a lot of African women find that unacceptable, find that unthinkable. Like, why should you even practice that? So those are where the differences lie. And because of that, feminists from Africa or gender activists in Africa or women activists in Africa prefer to be called activists because the label feminist tend to lean towards people who embrace those things that African women do not accept. African women's view on marriage is quite different from a lot of Western women. African views on divorce is quite different from those of Western women. So those kind of things make feminism different, and the experience of feminism different in Uganda. So those are the debates around the label African feminism. And sometimes African women are critiqued by Western feminism, who are the dominant discourse that, this is just a politics of naming. You just want to be called different, but you're not different. We all speak against inequality. We all speak for social justice. What are you really arguing about? But it is beyond politics of naming. You see, naming something brings it to life, and that is not named dies. Even culturally in Africa, now that we are talking African feminism, part of a way African families ensure continuity, ensure immortality, is not that because we don't die, but to ensure that the next generation carry your name. So people take it almost personally. For instance, I already have a niece named after me, and many people are shocked because most people are named after someone has died. So for me, I know there's continuity. There'll always be Patricia Lethal, But many people, you'll find they name their kids after their mother, after their father, or you take your child back to your parents. So to ensure the patriarchal lineage, children are named based on their father's side. So the grandfather chooses the name or the father chooses the name. Most children who carry names given by their mothers, there's always the suspicion that you don't know the actual father of the child, or you're a single mother, you don't want to associate. There are other reasons given, things like that. Yet for a Western feminist, you'll find that maybe this is a discursive process and it doesn't really matter. So African women want to be named as African women, so that it is immortalized, it is in writing, it is there for people to know. Because when we don't speak African feminism and keep saying feminism, but the things carried in the context, in the discourse, have nothing to do with African women, then we are written out of history. Our experiences are written out of history. And this is the same thing activists or feminists in general critique men about, critique patriarch about. That patriarch, even the Bible says him, says the man to mean woman and man. So that's why even when it comes to language, we actively insist that we say chairperson. That way woman and man is what? Accommodated, not to just say chairman. In Africa, females who are royals are called his, yes? They are not women, they are men. Suddenly, a woman is in charge, they are men. It becomes a he. So it's acceptable for women who are queens who are to become kings, things like that. But if this is not appreciated and talked about, then the experiences of African women are written out of history. So before we know it, nobody really knows what it means to be an activist, to be a feminist in Africa. Why should my appreciation for marriage be relegated? And yet, I also want social justice. For me, it is something I want. It is like the people who speak against dowry. Personally, I'm one of those women who think dowry is a source of subjugation of women. A lot of women are in abusive relationships because dowry was paid for them. And yet the family I come from, people embrace dowry. A lot of women who I think are enlightened around me. Just last week, I was giving a lecture to a group of young journalists on dowry. And all the women in the room, there were 30 women and I think 7 men. And men actually also found paying dowry as a source of oppression, as a source of suffering. They are denied women they want to marry because they can't afford a certain number of cows or things like that. If fathers don't allow their kids, their children to marry the men they prefer because that men cannot afford, and they are forced into unnecessary marriages. So sometimes people end up eloping because they cannot meet that criteria. A young man has just graduated, he has no job, the woman has no job, or they're just starting out, but the amount of resources they are allowed. And yet some women said, no, for me, I want dowry to be paid for me. It is a form of appreciation for my parents. Actually, women who they don't pay dowry for, people laugh at them. I'm not. So you see, there are different values we have to that. While Western feminism talks against things like that, it is one of the values for me personally I appreciate. And of course, at the end of the day, especially a woman like me, born and bred in Uganda. I've gone through a Ugandan system, but the Ugandan education system is a product of the West. I speak in English. I've been educated in Uganda school. So at the end of the day, I have a flavor of Western influence and of course the Ugandan influence. So there are things I embrace because they make sense to me, and there are things I will reject either because of my cultural or religious leaning, and it makes sense to me. So the argument in the politics of naming is that yes, it's politics of naming, because if we don't name ourselves, someone else will take over. I mean, you've seen countries like Sudan. When Southern Sudan broke off from Sudan, they are not Sudan, they're Southern Sudan. Because if you don't give them a tag, then they disappear into someone else's identity, and before you know it, they will disappear. There are a lot of countries where people want to secede because they say, for us, we are from Eastern Nile, we are from Western Nile. We are from this part of the country, we are different from that part of the country. We are not really Ugandans. For us, we are in the Northern Nile, things like that, because they feel that, in terms of dialect, we are different. In terms of cultural appreciation, we are different. In terms of religion, we are different. So why should I be called Ugandan? So African feminism, that is what they push for, that yes, we have points of intersection, but we have points of departure, and these aspects need to be appreciated and basically documented.